Hello everyone, I'm Terry Ryder, founder of Hotspotting, and welcome to today's special webinar event. Now, whether you're an existing property investor or planning to become one, this discussion is essential viewing because it's all about avoiding problems and saving money by being proactive. My special guest today is the best in the business when it comes to understanding the importance of excellent property management and achieving great outcomes for both landlords and tenants. Corinne Bohan of Image Property. Corinne, welcome.
Thanks, Terry. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, so I always look forward to these discussions about property management. I tend to believe it's the most underrated element that property investors think about. They get very excited about buying the property and the future growth, but there's this very, very important component, which I think, I would say a good property management is absolute gold. I'm sure you agree with that.
Yeah, look, definitely, Terry. It is can be undervalued, but I think as soon as you've had an investor who's had an experience with a not so great property manager, they're one of the most grateful clients you can have. So I think if you are providing a level of service and advice, not only to the landlord, but also the tenant, it's an incredibly rewarding role to be in, but also huge benefit to an investor. So not one that you be looking to easily appoint without doing some proper research into it, I'd say.
Okay, so just before we launch into the nitty gritty of today's discussion, could you just tell us, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, a little bit about Image Property?
Yeah, sure. Look, images are a little, not so little anymore, but it's something that was a family business purchase over back 2010. I have a bunch of brothers and a father who was always very into property, and we saw it as an opportunity for just a little rent roll of 260 properties. At that point, not much of a clue. I think it went backwards before it went forwards, but we learnt really early about the importance of process and the importance of having a process that everyone followed as opposed to just having good people. And I think because it wasn't attached to any sales arm or anything like that, we really invested in getting exactly the property management side up and running and working really seamlessly and well. We've been really grateful to have fantastic clients and who've stuck with us for large periods. We've got some who we've managed right from that day one. We've now grown to managing just over 5,000 properties, mostly here in southeast Queensland, ranging from up in Noosa down to all the way down to the Gold Coast, and a little office there in South Melbourne. And yeah, we've in 2020 attached a sales arm, and we now have about 100 agents who work with Image Property as well. And it's beautiful because we used to have to refer on our clients after working with them for so long to somebody else to do the sales, and it just didn't make sense. And so now it's nice that we're able to look after our clients for whatever property needs they have across sales or management.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about property management and the important things that investor owners need to be aware of. Under two broad headings, I think we're going to look at the changing legal landscape, because I think it's reality that state and territory governments love tinkering with the rules that govern the relationship between landlords and tenants. But we're also going to talk about the important maintenance issues and the rising cost of them, and how being proactive rather than reactive can make a big difference for an investor owner. So perhaps we could deal with the maintenance issues first. When we talked about this last week, you very much stressed the importance of not being reactive, but taking opportunities to be proactive with those.
Yeah. I think from my standpoint, as in my role, we've got to look to the biggest pain points of the business and how the process and the experience for the client can always be improved. And one of the ways, and one of the things that is always hot on the list is you can nail things like communication and service and that, but the maintenance, because we use so many third-party providers, can still be that issue that causes the most friction. There's an increase. Everyone knows rents have increased dramatically in most areas, and so with that comes an increase in expectation of tenants as well. They do expect that things are acted upon very quickly, that things are at the standard of what they're paying for weekly. So with Southeast Queensland particularly, the cost of construction is escalating, definitely, and the actual trades that are available is getting harder and harder. So I know that there's many other states too that are also having those issues. So I think we've really worked on at our company trying to be as proactive as we can in the advice and the plan around the maintenance of the property. So as opposed to waiting for things to be reported and so forth, looking at each leasing campaign as an opportunity to look at the house, see what could be done in a proactive manner to have people there in the most cost-effective way at one time. And do the changes that you need up front, because then when you're handing over a product that is in tip-top condition and has everything working seamlessly, you can also expect to get it back at that same condition. There is also a change in relation to minimum housing standards and tenants' rights around what is no longer a nice to have, but a must have, and the timeframes in which you can service those. So if you are left in a situation here in Queensland, I'm not sure if anyone else has been up here or spending much time up here, but it's been a very wet period of time up here, especially on the Sunshine Coast, and mold is an issue that we can have occur in this environment as well. That used to be something that tenants they now have really clear timeframes about the expectations of those things being attended to in the minimum housing standard. And if you're being reactive to it as opposed to proactive, it's always going to cost you more. It's always going to cost you more. And worst case scenario, it doesn't just cost you with the trades, it costs you with compensation, and it costs you with, being breached by the tenant as well. So we have a program here where whenever we onboard a property as well, we do a complete asset register for our landlords. So we go through the property and we mark off it, stoves, dishwashers, electric, any of those appliances and so forth that are in the property at the beginning of the tenancy, hot water systems and so forth. And then when maintenance is reported, we're always checking against the product to see, is it under warranty? Is it due to be replaced? What is the best cost-effective way for us to now act upon fixing this product, and providing that advice to our landlords as well. So I think as soon as you're waiting for it to come at you and delaying, it doesn't get better. So our advice is that you use that period in between one tenant going out and one tenant coming in to do what you can to the property to make sure it is then in the next situation going to be looked after to the best possible, and you've done things in a cost-effective way as opposed to sending out a handyman, 20 times throughout a tenancy.
Yeah. So one of the opportunities for landlords to be proactive is to take action and to keep standards up when there's a gap in the tenancy, when someone moves out before the new tenants moves in.
Yeah.
How can you be proactive during a tenancy?
So during a tenancy, we've got a great one at the moment, actually. One of our air conditioning suppliers does a great deal for air conditioning service in winter, because obviously he doesn't do as much air conditioning jobs in winter. So just prior to end of financial year, it's something that we put out to our owners to say, if this is something that you would like to have again before tax time comes, get out and get your air conditionings completely serviced here at this point for a deal. And then when it comes to summer, because if air conditioning goes out in Queensland and you're not able to get onto it very quickly, there is going to be the tenants are going to be within their rights to complain or seek compensation for that, depending on how quickly you can get it turned around. So by servicing those kind of things and making sure you're doing it in advance, that's often going to be a much bigger cost saving to you. So trying to think about those also with termite barriers, all of the pest control stuff, and minimum housing now, doing those kind of proactive services annually is a much better way of going about it than waiting for there to be an issue and then trying to get trades out at that time.
One of the things I love about having a great property manager, and always try very hard to have a great one because I think they're just so valuable, is that they seem to have a pool of really good tradespeople, electricians, plumbers, handy people who they can bring in quite quickly at reasonable rates. Now, I think what you're saying is that's becoming harder to achieve, but I'm sure that's part of what you do try to achieve as a really good property manager.
Yeah, look, we've got great trade suppliers we have fantastic relationships with, and obviously being the size we are and with the big amount of business we can provide them, they are very reactive to our business when needed, which is great. I think some things that have gone is that if you went back 5 years ago and you had a some taps or something, like some tapware that might need replacing, you might get a couple of quotes for it. You might get a couple of trades going out quoting and seeing who gets the work and so forth. People are now expecting more and more to be paid for quoting, and expecting that they don't want to quote for smaller jobs if they're attending the property. And that, I think, with the amount of work that the trades now have on, that is it is very reasonable. Any of the larger amounts or the unknown amounts, definitely, we've still got trades who will quote on them. But using good trades that have got a history with a business and are reputable, that's one of the things that your property manager should definitely be able to provide to you. And then that the works are usually being done by the same trade, which is great, because if we ever have anything go wrong with anything that has been done already by our trades, they get back out there and fix it up for us. So it is that peace of mind, and having somebody else who can keep an eye on it and make sure it's all done to the right standard as well. Definitely.
How important is it for me as a landlord to allow you as the property manager a fair amount of leeway to not have to consult me to get smaller things fixed, anything below a certain price threshold, so that you don't have to constantly be consulting landlords and getting approval?
Yeah, look, I think turnaround times is huge. Turnaround time is huge for both things. One, you want your tenant to be happy in the house. So if something comes through to you as a landlord that you then, we need to delay getting a response back, delay getting action on, that's creating an unhappy tenant. That unhappy tenant is now reaching out again and again and again. It doesn't create a good situation for anybody. So I think we need to have an amount of that everyone understands, like if up to this amount we can authorize to get somebody out to, and that needs to be the landlords have to feel comfortable with that. But I think it's a trust. It's built by trust, Terry. I think when you know that you've got a good property manager and they're scrutinizing invoices for you, and that's the benefit of the PMs and the people in our maintenance team. They're seeing these invoices come in over and over again. They know the standard kind of prices that there should be. They know when one comes in. The other day we had a perfect example where we wanted 3 quotes. It was a bit of an unusual one. And the 3 quotes, there was a range of $12,000 in these 3 quotes. So like in the first one we thought was a bit higher. The next one was higher, and the next one was higher again. So, but it was an unusual one, and you want to be able to get quotes in situations like that. But I think our team have a great access to a database full of, here's a hot water system, it's this size, this is an expected range. This is a tapware system, it's this is an expected range. So within a range, we know if it's fair, and if it's outside of that range, we question it. And I think that's all you're looking for, is that you want your property manager to be the person who's questioning it as if it was their money. So if it was passed to you and you're like, oh geez, that's a bit rich, you want them to go back and question it as opposed to just passing it on. Once you've got that trust, you do want to be able to just let your property manager make the decisions on lots of those things without having to wait and delay the process from moving forward.
How valuable is it in terms of getting things fixed efficiently and quickly? How valuable is a happy tenant?
Extremely. And like, just from a sustainability process part of it, like one of the big things, we have a growing tenant pool here in Australia. Like at the last census, we were over 30% for the first time ever. The census done before that in it was 2021, we're over 30%. Before that, we were at 26%. That's a jump of 4%. This is a huge part of our population of people who are going to be renters, who are going to, for all different reasons, live in rental properties. And managing that and having a seamless way of managing that is effective for the landlord and to the tenant and for the property manager. Because if we don't have people who want to do this role and do this role well, no one's going to win either. So it has to be an effective, whenever I'm thinking from a business perspective about, I want our clients to be really happy, I want our tenants to be really happy, and I want our PMs to be really happy and feel rewarded as well. So it's trying to create a system that allows everyone to have that. And if you've got tenants who are just not being responded to, are really unhappy, that's just creating more and more friction in every part of the situation. So holding tenants accountable for what their expectations are, but also holding landlords accountable for their expectations, I think is the way we get the right balance. And I think the balance is the most important thing. I think lately there's been a few decisions made here, there, and everywhere around Australia where I think the balance is not necessarily is of an equal balance at the moment. And I think that always has to be considered, because we need all parties in this, including the property managers.
I think you're referring to the tinkering with the legislation that we've seen in pretty much
Yeah,
every state and territory.
the tinkering or the absolute flat out changing of it everywhere.
Well, yeah, and I think you were talking about balance, and I think it is important to get the balance right. But it just seems to me that recent changes they've only really considered the rights and needs of one of the two parties to the transaction, or you might say three: the owner, the tenant, and the manager. And the tenant's rights have to be considered, obviously, but I don't think the needs of the investor owners. I think there's too much of media portrayal of investor owners as greedy rich bastards ripping off the system when we know that the average landlord owner is just your average Australian with an average income, probably a family, um, struggling to make ends meet because the costs of ownership have risen so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The exactly that. I think there is just the betrayal is at times quite unfair and can be quite unfair in one way bias. So I think with the it being sustainable long term, which is going to need to be, it needs to make sure everyone's point of view is represented in it. So I think with what has happened recently, I could tell you 100 stories of amazing stories of landlords and what they've done during times that have been really difficult with COVID or rent increases. Everyone's like, oh, landlords are putting rents up everywhere. The amount of landlords I know who are like, oh, look, I think that's a fair and reasonable amount. Let's leave it at that. They're fantastic tenants. These are not the stories that get perpetrated. So there's not the stories that get a lot of traction, but there is just as many of those stories. And there's a multitude of stories of amazing tenants who do amazing things for landlords as well. It's just not the story that gets the most
It's the
attention.
extreme, it's the extreme examples, both of
Yes.
and tenants that are portrayed in media. As a long time investor and therefore landlord, I've never had a problem with a tenant. Partly, I think, because I've always had good property managers and they make sure I do have good tenants. But I play my part by reacting same day to any request for something that needs to be fixed, something that needs to be maintained. I'm
Yes.
particular about getting back to them as fast as I can, giving approvals same day where possible, and just getting things fixed and keeping the relationship smooth.
And exactly that. That is also what is also protecting your asset. So that's the biggest thing at the end of the day too. You want to make sure that you've got this house and this asset that is best looked after for long term, whatever the intention to do with it is. So making sure you're acting in a proactive way encourages your tenant to do so as well.
So you alluded to the fact that there are growing numbers of tenants, and I guess that relates to the reality that housing affordability means it's harder and harder for people to transition from being tenants, those that want to becoming first home buyers and beyond. And so the number of tenants is rising, and therefore political power of tenants is rising. So we are seeing changes to the laws, and
Yes.
that's something that's very, very hard to keep up with as an owner, and particularly if you own properties in different states. Must be also challenging for you as a property management company.
It's extremely challenging. It's something that just the amount of changes that have come in have been sort of not like anything that has happened in the industry previously. So they just staying on top of it and making sure you've got the admin and the support right. Like we as a company have, tech platforms that allow us to be able to implement things quite quickly, but they're big changes. They're big things that change in our daily processes that our team have to be trained on. They have to be implemented and they carry a very much a weighted effect. So some of the examples are in Queensland here, there recently with the increase to rent changes and so forth. You can't increase the rent outside of it has to be within 12 months, but it's now attached to the property, not to the tenancy. So if you had a tenant vacating, you were able to increase the rent because it was a new tenancy. That's not the case anymore. You now have, if a tenant vacates, but the rent at the property has been increased inside 12 months, you have to release the property and write into the new lease that you're going to have an increase possibly at 4 months. So the administration around making sure that all happens into your lease agreements and so forth, is there's a lot to it. And if it gets missed, if it doesn't get done properly, if it doesn't get checked, then the landlord can be out of pocket in those situations, and miss the opportunity. But there are big implications to how this affects our daily processes that definitely don't always can taken into consideration when the government goes, this is just what we're going to roll out.
Yeah.
It would
I
be
get the
lovely
feeling
if
that,
sometimes you got a bit more warning, or if you got a bit more assistance in, hey, this is how we're going to roll it out. But yeah, it's a big deal.
feeling that politicians use property managers as the conduit for rolling out these changes without really considering just how hard that can be in becoming fluent with all the changes, updating all your systems and communicating that to your investor owners.
Yeah, and like some of them are very much cost effective. Like, some of them have a real cost flow on to the landlord, and we're the ones who have to communicate that as well. We're the ones who have to educate our landlords. I think it's really important that landlords have a property manager who can provide them that information as well, and are updating them continuously, because they're not small changes by any means. Like what we've seen rolled out across the different states overall, from ranging from minimum housing standards to end of tenancy evictions and so forth, and the processes around all of those things. You need to be across it, and you need to make sure you're secure in the advice that you're getting from the property manager.
Seems to be one of the biggest changes we're seeing happening in states and territories around the country will relate to the rights of landlords to end a tenancy and to remove tenants from their property for whatever reason. That's changed a lot, hasn't it, in recent times?
Yeah, and that's a really big change. That is a very big change. And so with that, obviously you want tenants to have security and safety within their house and feel like that and lots of our tenants, make the property a home and take great care of it. But if you have tenants who are not treating the property as you would like it to be treated, who are continuously causing arrears and financial concerns to you, you have to make sure you follow the process specifically and exactly in order to, at the end of a tenancy, be able to end that tenancy. So that's a big change. It used to be based on the landlord and what the landlord wanted to do. We have some landlords who have thought in the past that they were never really wanted long-term tenants, and that's their personal choice with their personal property. It's now something that in many states is not as available for them to make that choice. So making sure you've got the right paperwork, and you've got the right processes being followed by the team is crucial. I don't think QCAT or VCAT or whichever ones, I think the amount of like we can see the wait times for if we ever have to go, or we have to have a phone conversation or a compensation or mediation event with them. The wait times on those are getting bigger and bigger. So I think the state government's brought a lot into place, but the manageability of it is also going to be very interesting.
Just want to remind everybody watching and listening today that if you've got any questions, and I'm sure that you will have plenty, because it's a complex issue that we're discussing today, please type your questions into the chat box or the Q&A panel that you see in front of you. We will allow time later in the broadcast to deal with as many of your questions as we can today. Must be really important to have great technology in a property management business to deal with all this, and to have alerts popping up, and without that I can't imagine how you'd be able to manage everything.
No. No, it's just a matter of changing the alerts all the time that we now need to be watching. But look, it is, we know that there's new ones coming in Victoria at the end of the year. We have an amazing system that, as I said, our beginning as a business grew in property management before we went into sales, which is often the reverse for most real estate companies. And we built out what we call our hub, which whoever you are in our team comes in every day to a dashboard, and that dashboard has exactly what they need to do on it for a day. So they have lease renewals, and those lease renewals make sure they flag it a time frame that allows us to be able to provide the tenant with all of the time periods and notifications of rent increases or of vacating information at the right time, so that we don't miss any of those dates. And they work off a system that lets them know exactly, based on color, the priority of the task as well. And yeah, just implementing with that, where what they have to be doing at what time to make sure that we're in line with legislation. So it works really well, but it also helps our PMs, because the PMs they're doing an amazing job. They do an amazing job, but essentially they manage everything that happens inside a home. And we all know what happens inside a home. Homes can be going along beautifully and well, and homes can also meet major disruptions in personal life, in financials, in relationships, and they are involved in that at times too. So they've got a lot to do, and it's really nice for them to be able to have a feeling that it is under control. They can see where it's all at and nothing's going to get missed. So building out that platform for us as a company has been crucial, because we have great people, but great people without great process still doesn't allow you to scale. So it's been really beneficial for us, and also helped it to be more sustainable and trainable for our team to have that. And I think gives our owners peace of mind that, you know, there's a huge turnover rate in property management, huge. We are really lucky here, but this year we're having 8 babies, Terry. So, which is beautiful and joyous. We had 2 girls last week, of 2 of our amazing star performers, and we have a bunch more to come. But it's nice for our owners to know that when they leave to have these beautiful events in their life, everything about their property still remains with us. It still remains in our systems and in our processes, and the next person can take off from there. They can check back and say, hey, that hot water system's broken down. Let's check. Have we done any work on the hot water system in the last year, 2 years? All that information still sits with us. So it's huge benefit.
Yeah. Now, I have heard that the attrition rate can be quite high in the property management. I mean, property managers are kind of the meat in the sandwich, aren't they? Sometimes between a difficult landlord or a difficult tenant, or both. I don't
Yeah.
envy that job, but
Yeah, they can be. And look, a lot of our team, I think it is that perspective and my frame of mind and how you frame it. They also get to be the person who rings, you know, people each day and say, hey, we've got a beautiful home for you to move into. They get to be the person who rings the landlord and say, we've found amazing tenants to start your investment journey. We have people coming to us as first-time investors who have grown portfolios to 5, 6, 7, and we've been along for the whole journey. So there is lots of positives to it as well, and some amazing relationships as well. So the people who do really well in PM, for me as a criteria, they have a great positive outlook on it, and they're also amazing at multitasking and organized. They're problem solvers as well. They can move forward with things, but you will only ever get what you put in. And I think if you've got an attitude that can be really rewarding, it definitely can be.
So we've talked about the reality that tenants' rights are growing and reflected in legislation.
Yes.
What are some of the consequences for investor owners of not complying?
So there's a range of changes. There is now across the states, none of them are exactly the same, but all moving into that same territory of more rights for the tenant. So in relation to emergency repairs across Queensland and other states as well, used to be that they had if they were not authorised to act, if the landlord did not act fast enough, the tenant could be authorised to act up to 2 weeks. That's now moved up to 4 weeks of what they can access in funds in Queensland here. They can access. In relation to the condition of the property when you move in here in Queensland too, we have one now that is, if it's not, you can put a notice to leave in without penalty of if within 7 days, if there was not conditions of the property met that meet minimum housing standard. And that it's easy enough to go, oh, of course, minimum housing standard should be, but if say the property had been vacant for 2 weeks, had major rain, and there's a little bit of mold in the garage, that now we could go in and wipe it off, but it falls into a very grey area that can be fixed. But there's the standards of which properties need to be handed over, the standard of which we meet the maintenance and how quickly we react to the maintenance, all now very much tenants are aware of, you know, exactly what the expectations are, and it is pushing people. I think, again, to the beginning of our conversation about the proactiveness of it all, but also to make sure you are moving quickly when you need to be moving as well. They have some additional ones here in Queensland in relation to what we're allowed to ask for when getting tenant applications now that have just come through with the new data privacy at the beginning of May. And in lots of ways there it's really valid, but there is also things that now you're not allowed to ask in relation to have you been breached in the past and so forth. So you are getting less information at times from the applicants who are about to move into the property and
So you know,
what they're putting forward.
sounds like you're going to be knowing less about the people who are living in your precious asset.
Yeah, you could be, and but I think at the same time, tenants want to also they are still volunteering a lot of the information. They are volunteering the rental references, and they are wanting to complete. Tenants often write a big part of the about me kind of thing in their rental references, and I think taking away those abilities for the tenant to put that there, I don't think that services the tenant very well either. The landlord wants to have a bit of a connection with the person who's going to be living in their property, and many times too, they want to know who's going to be there and they want to know about them a little bit. So I think getting the balance right again in not invading privacy and not making it unachievable for tenants to do it. I think one of the issues we're sort of seeing is it's if it becomes really easy for tenants to put applications in everywhere, then all of a sudden you get a tenant putting in 25 applications and you're wasting everyone's time with admin. Like, which property did you want? Which one are you looking for? So yeah, just navigating through this next period. And hopefully we've seen, I think there has been a huge amount of changes come in recently, and so maybe it'll be time that it just is allowed to sit and pause here for a little bit without any other major overhauls announced. I know in relation to the period of time you have to let a tenant know about an increase in rent is coming up to changing in Victoria at the end of the year. So again, moving from 60 to 90 days. All of these things are achievable as long as you've got somebody who is across them and they have them implemented into their processes and systems.
Okay. Do you have any solitary lessons, case studies of landlords who didn't comply and regretted it later?
Uh, we have had a situation recently where we did make it clear to the landlord about some minimum housing standard things that we didn't think he was very aware. We set a minimum housing standard of some outdoor kind of areas, but with the mold and different things like that. And the tenant just returned the keys. The tenant returned the keys. We had said it needed to be fixed in time. We didn't move quickly enough. What we wasted there was a vacate period. We wasted advertising money. We wasted the beginning of the rental period, and we had to do it again properly. So the perceived saving was definitely a bigger cost in the end for not having done that. In relation to things and reaction times on compensation now, it is one of the biggest things. Like a reaction time to maintenance is coming up more and more. You've got to act quickly, and you can't expect that when you decide to act that a trade will just be able to act at the same time. So you have to factor in that if we've got to get somebody out to service a leak, that we also have to get the trades out there in the right time frame. So if it takes you a week to get onto responding or reacting to it, and then it takes a trade, then we are now moving into a territory of an inappropriate amount of time for the tenant to wait. So I think those kind of things. I think some proactive examples we have with some of our owners. What we try and do for our multi-owners, particularly, or owners who have got properties sometimes in the same complex as well. We try and do banking of handiwork, of like works that can be done. So we go through routines and we can see certain things that have been done. But if we're going to get a plumber onto site, we'd rather the plumber go through and check the other properties on the site at the same time for what could possibly be something that's going to come up in theirs, and do a bit of an overall check while they're on site. We also try and do that. Our PMs are very proactive about trying to do that in relation to little bits of work that get presented at routine inspections or get presented by the tenant, but they're not a necessary have to be done at that time, and to try and bank those up, and so that we can act on them at one time, and it's more cost effective for our landlords as well. So if I'm sending an electrician to the property, check the other, like go through and check all the lights. If we're going to check downlights, if we're there for 2 downlights, let's do them all at once, so that we're not sending an electrician back in 3 months' time to do the same thing. Being more when you've got the trade on site, using them for it as much as you can as a landlord, I think is a really cost-effective way to do it as well.
Lots of questions are coming in, and we'll get to those very, very soon, because I'm sure there's plenty more that are coming as well. I've got a few of my own. I just, before we get there to the questions, I just want to
Yes.
touch on that other aspect, that other potential aspect for investor owners. We've been talking about permanent tenants. What about short-term tenancies, the Airbnb route? Is that something that you handle as a property manager as well?
No, we don't. Is the crux of it. So it's a very interesting one because we are getting asked, it is getting asked more and more. We as a company want to do what we do and do it really, really well. So we try and focus our attention. There's co-living is becoming more spoken about with the returns, the yield on properties where you're putting in three separate leases as opposed to renting it as a house. And there's more of those being built at the moment as well. There is additional cost to the landlord on those as well. There's charges that you can't on pass, so your utilities and so forth can't be passed on. I also think with the management of three different groups of people living in one house, there is the chance of more friction and so forth in that as well. So it's not something we do. Short-term letting, I know that some other property management agencies do as well and have moved into it. It's a very different type of letting as well. And I think, particularly here in Brisbane, Queensland, we've got a large portfolio on Sunshine Coast. I think we'd prefer to do what we do really well. I think there is a lot of our investors, funnily enough, who've gone and said, look, we're going to Airbnb, we're really into this, we're going to get a better return and so forth. And the amount of those who have come back has actually been quite surprising too. I think the not always factoring the additional costs for that kind of short-term letting or the additional wear and tear to the property is something, and some of the reasons why they have come back. But it will probably grow here in Brisbane as well, especially in the lead up to the Olympics, I think. So I think there'll be particularly a good 6 month period where everyone's going to be like, there's no long-term letting, it's just short-term letting only. So, but we'll see. But look what's happening in Spain right now. Spain are getting rid of Airbnb, I think. Is that what I saw? There's a big push against it. And I think with
Yeah,
housing supply, it is something that has to be taken into consideration, how sustainable it is to have all these houses that sit empty.
yeah. Well, Spain is such a big tourism country, so I can imagine that it's a slightly different ball game there.
Definitely.
We might turn to some of the questions that are now coming in. Just remind people, type them into the Q&A panel or the chat box. One of the questions I wanted to ask you was, just what you can expect from a good property manager in terms of inspections and reports and illustrations, etc. And Nick is also asking, what question should an investor owner ask a prospective property manager who might be angling to get your job?
A prospective property manager. One of the things we always would talk to with, if you were talking to as far as what you can expect for inspections, if I go to that one first and what you can expect from a good property manager in relation to that, you always want to know about communication. You want 24-hour communication as a minimum. So our landlords know that if they're reaching out to us, they will be in touch. Like someone will be back to them straight away. It is the biggest pain point that comes from landlords who come to us, is that I could never get hold of anyone. No one got back to me. I didn't know where things were at. Communication is your number one. And you'll read it. If you look at any company, you'll read it in the reviews. You'll read it as either great or read it as terrible. It is the number one thing, is people want to be able to get on to the person who's looking after their property.
It's a two-way street as well, I'd imagine.
Definitely. And that's exactly the amount of times we have sat here, Terry, we'll be like, I've got this amazing application, this amazing family want to move into this property, and all I need is the landlord to say yes. And I've rung them, I've texted them, I've sent them an email, and we lose the application. And so we're there and online for a little bit longer. So being really, working out the best way to work with your property manager, if that's text messaging, emails, phone calls, and making sure you've got that relationship where if they're communicating with you, it's important, and vice versa. And I think that's the number one thing, getting that relationship right. In relation to inspections, you want to be able to have thorough insight to the condition of your property. So something that we provide, we do virtual tours when we do an entry. So we don't only just have the photos, we have a whole walkthrough tour. And what that provides to our interstate investors is priceless. They love it. It feels like they're walking through their property, a property that some of them have, only ever walked through once or not at all even. And so we also have that to rely on when we talk about the condition of the property that's handed back to us, we're like, look, it wasn't a little tiny photo we took. Here's the virtual tour. Here's exactly what it looked like when we gave it to you. It's much easier to ensure that it gets given back to us in the same way at that point. And then you want those, whenever those inspections and so forth are done, you want them to be reported to you in a way that you feel like it's really clear, it's really concise, and that we've got a plan. So it's a plan that the tenants are doing amazing and we're really thankful for that, or it's a plan that, hey, it's not quite up to scratch and we want to move it up to scratch and this is what we'll be able to do, or a plan that, hey, we want to do a little bit of work on this and this and this. So whichever outcome it is, you just want to know that you're all on the same page, feeling great, or you're feeling like, hey, we've got a plan to get it fixed.
Okay.
In relation, sorry, to questions you would ask a prospective property manager. So I would be very much talking to them about what is their process. So it's fine for everyone to say that they do this and this and this, but what processes are they actually running off? What's their system look like? If you wanted to sit down right now, you could name a property manager in my team and I could tell you exactly how many lease renewals they have left to do this afternoon. By 12 o'clock, I can guarantee that they've got no owners to update about listings that are online, because you never would at 12 o'clock. So, and we can show the process to our incoming investors, which I think they really like the idea of. They also have 24/7 transparency on everything to do with their accounts with us and to do with their Property Me owner portal, where they can check in at any time, which is a big thing that people do love. You want to get a feel for the way the company works and a little bit about the company and the business itself, because at the end of the day, you could have a great property manager, but if that property manager does leave, you want to know that it's more of a company structure or an office structure than just one individual. If you're just banking on one individual and you're banking on them being there for the duration of your property's journey, it can be a bit risky. You want to know that there is a support system in place and it's a team of people who are going to look after your property.
So Jordan is asking, I've got any plans for expansion for a next property? Because he said I could use some help in Cairns, Gladstone, and Wagga Wagga.
Cairns, Gladstone, and Wagga Wagga. Look, Queensland is our definitely our home and our birthplace. We'd never say no to expansion. They're not on the current list. So the Gold Coast is definitely, we've got a heading towards the Gold Coast with them. We are managing properties on the Gold Coast, and I think we want to make sort of more of a home down there in the next period, just with what's growing. And where our investors grow is often where we grow as well. So it works hand in hand. That's how Melbourne came out, South Melbourne. It was often a lot of our clients had properties down there, wanted us to go down there. It made sense for lots of reasons, and that's why we did it. So not yet for Wagga Wagga, but we'll see.
What do you do when a tenant stops paying rent and doesn't answer the agent's calls?
Yes, look, it's not a nice situation to be in at all, but you've just got to follow legislation. So you've just got to follow it down to a T and make sure you've done exactly what you need to do. So on the 8th day, you breach. And on the breach then has a period of time to be rectified, to not be rectified, and then you make sure you send the next paperwork of the notice to leave, warrant possession. You go through the whole process. There is nothing else you can do. Then you send all the appropriate communication to all the appropriate thing. You will have other people who you can contact on the lease or so forth, but then you just have to follow all of the legislation by making sure you issue the right breaches at the right time. In order, if you do that, then also you're making sure that sometimes we get tenants who've been in there for a while, and the owners are like, oh, they're getting up to 8 days. Well, but no, they'll be right and they'll get it back in order and that is lovely and that is good. But if you don't breach at the right time, and then let's say that for that situation, it doesn't get back in order, if you then need to claim on landlord's insurance and you haven't followed the procedure, you also are going to jeopardize possibly your claim on landlord insurance as well. So we always hope that everyone does everything but with the best of intentions, but we always make sure we act in accordance to legislation so that in all situations we're protected.
Okay. Another question. Recently, our tenants complained of algae developing on the blinds and want them to be replaced. What can we do?
Algae, did you say?
I think so, yes.
Algae and mold. Yeah, look, mold and algae, I'm not sure where you are, but it's a bigger and bigger issue, and It's an interesting one because it's something like living here in Queensland, it can come in certain spots quite quickly in this humid environment. And if you lived in your own home and you're as an owner occupier, you wipe it away, you clean it off, you get rid of it, and so forth. Now with the minimum housing standards, you have to be very reactive to get it, and you can ask different types. So there's definitely steps to getting the tenant to assist as well, but you can't just ignore it. You can't just ignore if there has been a complaint of mold or, and I'd say algae falls under the same jurisdiction as that. There's definitely things we can ask to be done, but then you do possibly have to look and get somebody out there to treat it if it is an ongoing issue as well, or if it is an issue at the property, you need to get someone to treat it.
And I think in the circumstances that they're asking the question about, the tenants are asking for the blinds to be replaced completely.
And look, now with minimum housing standards, depending on where those blinds are, if they are there for privacy reasons, like if it is somewhere, a room that is deemed as needing privacy based on new legislation, I'm not sure which state we're in here with this question, but in Queensland, if those blinds were in the bathroom and there was a room or in a bedroom and there was a room outdoors, they would need to be replaced. Privacy screening is an expectation now. So do you think about all the Queenslanders, Terry, up here in Queensland that have never had curtains on any of the French doors and all the rest of it? Like it was quite an expense for some of our owners because people move in and you put your own curtain rods up and you put your curtains on them. But yeah, there's some that it will have to be updated with that, as well as all the little Queenslanders that have the little latches on them that with the security, like on the lower, they all had to be replaced. Locksmiths got a whole heap of work just recently because of the minimum housing standards. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Nicole, now her question relates to New South Wales. So the house is currently rented. Want to do a cosmetic renovation to walls, remove the old air conditioning, update the kitchen. How much notice do I have to give the tenants to leave and then re-advertise? Can you explain the rules?
You've asked me about, look, I would love to say I could definitely be your expert on New South Wales as well, but unfortunately we don't operate in New South Wales. I know from other places in Australia as well, with now the eviction notice based on you have to give a reason for it, and a major renovation would fall under that. But in Victoria, you would have to have like a BA and everything on that property. Like you'd have to be, it can't just be that you're going in to do things. It sounds from that renovation, you definitely would have that. And as long as you give that notice ahead of time and then provide the paperwork on what the renovations, that should be a reason to be able to end a tenancy there. Your time frames of you will fall within 60 to 90 days of an end of tenancy that they have to be allowed to know. That would be the time frames that apply to any end of lease in New South Wales, which off the top of my head, I wouldn't be able to tell you with exact, but yes, you would need to comply within those time frames.
I think the question of the blinds and the algae, that question has come back saying they're talking about Melbourne, and I know you do have a presence in Melbourne, and the blinds are in the living room.
Yes, if they're in the living room and they are not a privacy, but if they have moved in there with the blinds in place at the beginning of the tenancy, they would be looking for them to be replaced if they were going to be taken down. Yes.
Yeah. Jordan is asking, but you're talking about the efficiency of when a tradesperson is out there to have a good look around and tend to all issues that might arise rather than going back multiple times. Jordan's asking, do you find that tradespeople accept direction on this? It's presumably more lucrative for them to go back multiple times.
And I think that's where the relationship with the tradesperson does come into play. So we have, so for us, we have major plumbers and electricians who have been doing work at the same properties now for 4 or 5 years. So they have a relationship with the property and with the client as well. So I think establishing those relationships with your trades and hoping that your PM business and whoever you're assigning the work to has those trades within the business, because mostly what you are looking for with repeat, or where you would be sending an electrician and saying, hey, could you go and check, we've got this complaint about this light in this room, could you check these lights? That would be an electrician, hopefully, who does a lot of work at your company who you are using repeatedly. And in that situation, I would never imagine that they tried to price gouge or anything like that for you. I think they are more than happy to have that recurring relationship with the client. So that's our experience, definitely, with our trades. And then you do get some jobs, and we're the same, like where you are having to search for new trades, and we are all assessing like the standard of those trades at those times. I know that previous times here in Queensland, roofers, if you were a roofer, like when there was hailstorms and so forth, trying to find good roofers who were able to get out to get to jobs and knowing what the level of service and so forth was turned into. I was talking to anyone, if you wanted to start a business and be a roofer about 4 years ago, it would have been amazing.
Well, I certainly don't.
Yeah. Also,
But
bond cleaners, great bond cleaners. There's also some, we have some fantastic ones, but they're getting consistently and reliably the same groups is another business that's of a great value to our company.
in terms of tradespeople doing the right thing by you, the property, I imagine there's great value for a tradie to have that regular flow of work coming from a property manager that has multiple properties in a location.
Yeah, definitely. It's and we've watched many of our trades grow with us, which has been really lovely to see. And we've been able to, and we don't always get it right either. And they do get caught up in we do have properties that vacate and tenants have caused damage, and we need people to get in quickly so we can quote on it and make sure that that's all signed off in before the vacate is finalized, and that the tenants pay the appropriate amount for those works. So it is a give take relationship. We rely on them to be able to turn things around really quickly for us, to provide a high level of service for our clients, to be reactive when we need them to be, and they rely on us for a steady stream of business. So look, I don't know any successful business that works in solitary confinement. Like we're all reliant on other people around us. Compliance is a big one for us with smoke alarms and servicing and so forth, and making sure you have got the right trade partners is a big part of property management, and one that here in Queensland particularly, but I don't know, I think in all states will continue to be of a huge value to the success of the experience for all.
Okay. I've got a question which may be relevant to some of the other people watching and listening. I'm actually selling a property which is being beautifully managed by a wonderful property manager, and I kind of regret that the relationship's going to end, but I'm not sure where their responsibility ends, because the tenants had moved out, so I put the property on the market. There's still things that need to be done by a property manager. I'm just not clear whether they're actually still in my employ, because normally they charge a percentage of the rent, but there isn't any rent.
Yeah, exactly. There isn't any rent. And look, I think this is a little bit of a thing with there's quite a bit of times where where if you've got a good property management service, and um where they are working without, we have huge insurance claims here that we work on with our owners, and during that whole period there's no rent coming into the property at certain times, and we're helping them to assist them to get it to the final point with, when the insurance claim goes through, the funds are put in and the rent is taken then. But there is a lot of times where a good property manager will work in the best interest of the property. My property, I just actually sold an investment to Terry, and I had a great property manager. I used Image Property, and they managed it. But the transition between the sales agent and the PM, and from the tenant vacating to the new owners taking over, was seamless, and they work together, because our sales agents work really closely with our property management department. And I think if you have that, if you're doing all of your property needs in the one place, I think you can nail it. It is when, and we do see some issues, is when a property, an investor has brought us a property that was sold with someone differently, and it hasn't all been handled right up to that point. Like little things like rent paid in advance and so forth, like all of that has to be handled prior to the settlement date, and a good property manager and a good sales agent should make sure that's done for you. But I'm sure if you reach out to your property manager, Terry, they'll be happy to help you.
That is my expectation too, that they have been wonderful. Another property I have, the property manager sort of proactively started sending the rent weekly, which is something I haven't experienced before. I think they felt that that was an advantage to landlords, because costs had risen, and having the income coming in more regularly might be helpful. Is that something that people could ask for, or is it just a question of adjusting the computer and doing
Yeah.
it?
We do disbursements for some owners weekly, definitely. We do disbursements weekly, fortnightly, monthly. The issue sometimes with weekly is depending on how you've got your property's set up and the bills that come in for the property, you don't want to fall into a situation where if you're getting it weekly, then you're not going to have funds in the account to pay bills necessarily. It's going to get dispersed to you before it's got time to accumulate. So but some of the bigger bills that can come in at certain times, body corporate expenses that come in quarterly can be larger and maybe need money that has accrued over the course of a number of weeks in order to pay them. So instead of some of our owners prefer it, and if that's what they want, definitely. But at times it does mean that they're needing to put funds back into our account in order to pay bills on time so that they're not hit with overdue fees. So it is just getting the balance right. So if all the bills are being paid, I know here my rates and everything all seem to fall in the one month, and I'm like, to get dispersed hardly anything, but at least I haven't put any money into the account. So it is just managing what your ins and outs, and if you've got that right, or if you're doing the bills yourself, then yeah, you can reach out to your property manager. It is definitely possible. Yes.
Okay. So just last chance, if anybody's got any questions, don't waste this opportunity. We're coming towards the end of the broadcast, so if you do have any burning questions you haven't put forward, now's the opportunity. Just while we're waiting for maybe those last minute questions, Corinne, if somebody would like to follow up and make contact, ask further questions, maybe appoint you as their trusted property manager, what do they need to do?
Yeah, look, if you're looking to see more about the business and the services, obviously we service all the way down from the Sunshine Coast down to the Gold Coast here in Queensland and South Melbourne and the Melbourne area, larger Melbourne area there as well. If you reach out on our website, www.imageproperty.com.au, someone will be back to you within a few hours maximum. So it is the most efficient way. We've got a team of people who would love to bring on more investors. It's something we thoroughly enjoy doing, and yeah, providing an experience that our mantra here is it's the experience you always imagined. I think people go into buying an investment property with an expectation of what the experience is going to be like. I think sometimes investors go in a little bit blind and haven't really thought through the entire experience, but in relation to certain things. But your experience is that you're going to get a great tenant, you're going to have someone who you can talk to who helps you manage it, that it's going to be smooth. When there is a problem, you've got someone there advising you what you're going to do, what you need to do next, and that you've got a trusted person to work with on the management, a successful manager of your investment property for whatever future you're looking to attain with that. And that's what we here at Image very much, try and hang our hat on, is that we do a really good job and provide a great experience for our investors. And yeah, it's working. So it's working well. We definitely don't always, there's ups and downs to it all. I was very excited this year to see that the cyclone did not hit as big as much as we thought it might. It was a moment where I was like, we just finished our peak period of letting, which is always January, February, and at the end of it was a cyclone ready to hit, and I was like, oh, this could knock our entire team out for the whole year with the amount of work that comes out of this. But it was lovely to see that didn't happen. But when things like that are coming up, you want to know your property's in safe hands and you've got someone there to work with it on, and that's what we aim to be.
There was so much build up and expectation. It was almost disappointing when it didn't.
It wasn't disappointing for me. It wasn't in any way disappointing for me. One, it got everyone got to go home, work from home for a day, and allow no one was communicating with you. There was just a quietness. So everyone got on top of all their work, and then it didn't hit, and we're like, oh, it was a nice little reboot. So it did definitely hit, and it definitely caused some works, but not to the scale we were expecting, which was great to see.
Well, Corinne, thank you for the discussion. I think it's been a great webinar. I really enjoyed participating in it. I've learned heaps. You'd think I know everything I need to know as someone who's been in the business for as long as I have, but there's always new things to learn. And as you pointed out, the rules keep changing. And so it's really hard to keep up to date. And it just reinforces for me the gold value of having a great property manager.
Yeah. Thank you, Terry. It's been very enjoyable.
So what would you say, just to end, the key 3 or 4 or 5 dot points you think people should take away from the information we've talked about today?
Number one is have a proactive maintenance plan for your property. Every property needs maintenance. All of our properties need maintenance. The ones we live in, the ones we invest in. What's your proactive plan for it? And get somebody to help you execute on that. Number two, if you are not getting any updates or information in relation to legislation changes, if you are not being kept up to date, you need to reach out and ask and find out about that, because you need to make sure you are working within accordance to legislation on your investment property, and your property manager is as well. And number 3, your relationship with your property manager, you're going to get as you'll get out as much as you put in as well. I think it's a really important relationship. It's one at times that I think can sometimes feel like they're doing a lot of work without a lot of we've got many investors here who are just so beyond grateful for the work that they do, and that's what gets the best out of our PMs as well, when they know that it is appreciated and respected, because it doesn't always come from all sides of the party. So it is a really important role that they do, and it's good when it's appreciated.
And it's so important to make your property manager know that they're appreciated, to say thank you occasionally.
Yeah, which our landlords do in abundance, which is great to see. But yeah, invest in that relationship. It's an important one.
Okay. Thank you, Corinne, again. Let's do it again soon. It's been a wonderful discussion. I hope you people out there watching and listening got as much out of it as I did.
Thanks, Terry. Always fun.
Okay. See you next time.
Bye.